You're watching Hindustan Times and I'm Aditi Prasad. It's been 100 days since the ceasefire along the LoC or the line of control. India and Pakistan have had that ceasefire. It's been 100 days. That is, of course, barring one round of firing between the BSF and the Pakistan Rangers along the international border. Remember, on the 25th of February this year, the DGMOs on both sides decided to strictly implement the ceasefire, which had been agreed to in 2003, but had actually never been followed in letter and spirit along this tense border. But now 100 days have passed and there is a fragile peace along the LoC. Question is, how long is it going to last? And I'm joined by strategic analyst Sushant Sareen. He's also a senior fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. Mateen Haider, a known Pakistani journalist and TV analyst, and Indian defense expert. We have Kamar Aga joining us. Before we dive in with our guests and try to understand this complicated situation, let's listen into what the Army Chief, General Naravane, had to say on this when he visited the valley yesterday, that is the 100 days after the ceasefire.
That is the terror infrastructure which is there on the other side of the LC, the terrorist camps, the terrorists, and that continues. And therefore there can be no slackening as far as we are concerned in our levels of preparedness or alertness. As far as the other question you asked regarding trust, trust is a very difficult thing to come by and it takes a very long time to develop. And there have been decades of mistrust between Pakistan and India, and obviously the situation on that score cannot change overnight. However, if the ceasefire continues, if they continue to observe the ceasefire in letter and spirit, if they stop and desist from trying to push terrorists across and foment trouble in India, then all these small steps will definitely go incrementally to build up that level of trust between the two countries. That although the ceasefire is in place, we cannot in any way reduce our levels of alertness and preparedness. We have a counter-infiltration grid to prevent any movement from across the line of control. All these deployments are dynamic and they depend on the situation and the threat perception. So from time to time, we do keep reviewing these deployments, and if we feel that the situation permits, then definitely we do take recourse to pulling out some troops from active deployment to the rear areas so that they also get time for rest and relief. In this overall gamut, the role of the army is to bring down the levels of violence to an extent where the civil administration and the local security forces can then play the role that they have to play in the development of the region and of course of J&K.
Okay, and that was a short clip that we played out here, but he also said other things, and two things stand out from what General Naravane, the Indian Army Chief, said, that two things stand out. One, that the onus for maintaining this peace is on Pakistan, and two, that terror groups across the border have not been dismantled yet, and therefore India cannot afford to drop its guard. Now, these are two very important things coming out from that statement. And let me start with you, Sushant. In your perspective, what's behind the Army Chief's continued skepticism as far as Pakistan is concerned, despite 100 days of relative fragile, although fragile, but relative peace along the LoC?
Look, I don't think he's skeptical. I think he's being a realist. Anybody who has observed India-Pakistan relations, and General Naravane has been an army officer for the last 40 years. A substantial part of his career has dealt with either Pakistan or China. Uh, and clearly, unless he was living in cloud cuckoo land and having these airy fairy dreams, which people occasionally have, people like you and me. If he was being a realist, he would say what he said. We know it for a fact that yes, uh, the Pakistani terror groups have gone under the radar screen, but they haven't been dismantled. They haven't been eliminated. They continue to exist. They continue to function. We know it for a fact that the Pakistanis are still, wanting to fish in troubled waters. We have evidence of it in terms of some of the target killings and other things which are happening in Jammu and Kashmir. Uh, but again, it's at a lower level. It hasn't crossed the threshold of tolerance. So all of those factors pretty much remain in place. They might have become low key, but they are very much in place. So I think, and given the past history of India and Pakistan, where we have this habit of going out of our out of control and doing this puppy juppy diplomacy, which inevitably leads to a stab in the back. I think this time around, at least from the Indian side, there is a greater degree of realism. There is no romanticism about making peace with Pakistan. And I don't see how you can make peace with Pakistan with the current dispensation which is there in Pakistan. So clearly, things like you said, there is a semblance of peace along the line of control, which works well for us, just as it works well for Pakistan. And I would imagine that both sides would be keeping their powder dry. Both sides would be preparing for a time which is not entirely unlikely, where hostilities might start all over again. So if you need some bunkers to be prepared, you need to some bunkers to be repaired, you need some other things to be made to beef up your security grids, you would do that. You would hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And I think that's the stage we are in.
Let me get Mateen Haider in at this point. Mateen, give us the perspective from across the border. Uh, Sushant has very clearly said that he does not expect this to last, and that we need to build our, reserves as far as we can see, and that this is not skepticism, this is realism on the part of the Indian Army Chief, because that's how India-Pak relations have been. Give us your sense of what you think the perspectives from across the border are, from the side of the Pakistani establishment.
I beg your pardon. There was distortion in the voice. Can you repeat your question
I
again?
can repeat my question, and my
Yes, thank
question
you.
is this: that you heard Sushant Sareen.
Yes, I
Sushant
did hear
is
him.
yes, Sushant is skeptical about this peace along the line, relative peace along the line of control remaining there. He's saying that India-Pakistan relations are such that you take one step forward and two step backwards. All the that seems to be happening, and there's also the specter of Kashmir. I want you to give me the sense from your side, from the Pakistan, from the other side of the border, to understand how do you feel and why do you feel that this relative calm along the LoC, will it stay, or can it be upset at any time? What is the other
Yes,
side
okay.
view?
I got it. I got it. Thank you so much. And this is definitely India, Pakistan are celebrating.
Yes, we
This is
can hear you. Please.
definitely 100,
Yeah.
days of ceasefire along with the line of control. And a couple of weeks back, I got an opportunity with the Pakistan Army to see the ceasefire at the Lipa Valley in Azad Jammu and Kashmir. So I've been to different line of control sectors, most popular one Chikoti in the past as well. But particularly after this understanding between Director General of Military Operations of Pakistan and India, Army took the journalists to see what effects are on the civilian population. And I think without going into any controversy or provocative statement of the Indian Army Chief that terror groups are still operating, I think if such statements are continuing from India, then we can see the peace is fragile. I think India should reciprocate with seriousness, and such allegations should be avoided. Now, coming precisely to what effects have been on the civilian population. This basically both India and Pakistan did it basically to protect their civilian population, and there are reports there have been high-profile foreign dignitaries behind this particular diplomacy, which finally brought the ceasefire between India and Pakistan. India and Pakistan's common foreign friends. They played a very vital role. But since you played the clip of the Indian Army chief, I think if such statements would continue to emanate from India, then there could be a similar reaction from Pakistan. So what we have seen, and we have seen the civilian population in the Lipa Valley, people were extremely happy. People were extremely happy. So now taking you to some of our soldiers who spoke to
Yeah, I will
just
come back to
let
you,
me
sir.
finish. Yes,
Yeah,
some of
sure,
our
please.
soldiers who spoke to the Indian soldiers, because Indian Pakistani soldiers do interact with each other. The tone and the tenor of the Indian soldiers were extremely peaceful, friendly. They were so happy, really. The pleasantries were being exchanged between the soldiers of Pakistan and India. So this means that this I'm talking of the exact at the line of control, right? With from my own eyes, really. So I think I will not say this is fragile peace. This should be everlasting. This should be durable, and it could be durable provided the both sides, Foreign Office of India, Pakistan, militaries of India, Pakistan, political leadership of India, Pakistan should exercise restraint in making provocative statements. And this ceasefire would definitely benefit ultimately the civilian population, which have been the biggest sufferer along with the LoC. Yes, over
If
to you.
we if we talk about provocative statements, sir, I think while the army chief was just, I don't think he was being provocative, and I will let Kamar, let him come in, Kamar Raga come in on this. But I think he was just delivering facts as they are. He was just saying that there is relative peace along the line of control. There have been no violations, and that is saying a
Yes.
lot because there have been a lot of violations in 2019, in 2020, even till February 24. From January till February 24, there were 728 ceasefire violations by Pakistan, and ever since there has been relative calm. But the army chief was just pointing out that yes, there is no violations, but yes, the terror infrastructure across the border, they're not seeing uh, uh, any signs of that terror infrastructure being dismantled. And I want to come to you and Kamar Agaji, that please explain to us your understanding of the army chief statement and what Mr. Mateen Haider said.
I fully support, Sushant has rightly said, Army Chief is a very pragmatic person. What he has said, there's no doubt about it, because this is not the first time ceasefire agreement has, India and Pakistan has reached number of agreements in the past. You have mentioned just now. You've given even the dates of the past agreement. So the problem is, there is no change in Pakistan's policy towards Kashmir. There is no change in Pakistan's policy towards India. That remains the same. That creates problem. You see what has happened whenever the pressure comes on Pakistan. So Pakistan, or allows civilian government to negotiate with India. And whenever we reach some agreement or about to reach some agreement, those things were scuttled by by the militant strike either in Bombay or in Delhi or some other places. At one point of time, we were hoping that Sir Greek or some other issues, could be solved very soon, but all of them were scuttled. So as long as Pakistan continues to support militancy in Kashmir, we have to be very careful when dealing with Pakistan. As long as Pakistan continues to claim over these territories, there won't be, change. Yeah, these are temporary things. Now Pakistan is concentrating on Afghanistan, and Afghanistan has become very important for Pakistan. So they wanted to divert their army from this front to Western Front in Afghanistan border. So it suits him. It suits
Yeah,
them. They don't
and
want any
yes, I will talk about Afghanistan in some detail in just a bit. But I want to come to Prime Minister Imran Khan's comments on Kashmir, which continue to come. Mateen Haider, I want to address this to you. That I believe is more provocative, is what provocation looks like. It doesn't it? I mean, continuously raking up the Kashmir issue, saying roll back the scrapping of special status of Jammu and Kashmir, and only then we can talk about lasting peace. This is just 2 days ago. Imran Khan said exactly that. Isn't that provocation to the fragile peace along the LoC?
Good question. Very respectfully to Qamar Agha Sahab. I think, neutrally speaking, Pakistan is not making any claim. Pakistan is talking facts and reality. And if India is making any claim, India has to be reminded about United Nations Security Council resolutions, which the first Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru, also accepted and promised that these resolutions would be implemented, plebiscite would be given, but very politely reminding Indian political leadership and
So you are talking
my two
about.
very worthy analysts. I think Pakistani Prime Minister is not making any provocative statement. He is just drawing the attention of the UN, of the India, of international community about facts. Right? So
But
it's not
Pakistan
a
has
claim.
been
It's
trying
not
to
a claim either by
internationalize the
India or
Kashmir
Pakistan.
issue. But
Yes.
Pakistan has been trying to internationalize the Kashmir issue at every possible forum, and it's found itself isolated. And I think Sushant wants to come in there. Sushant, yes.
I would just like to say that it was
Aditi.
India which went to the White House to Mr. Trump, who requested the former US President,
I
Mr.
will.
Donald Trump, for mediation. So, and Mr. Trump did mention it in his meeting with Prime Minister Khan on 26th of July 2019 in the White House, and India very quickly responded and denied. Then Mr.
Lots,
Trump, the former US
exactly.
President, reminded that so and so occasion, Mr. Modi, you talked to me about mediation on Kashmir. I think
Let's not
facts
let's not bring
should
Mr.
remain facts.
Yeah, let's not bring Mr. Trump in over here, because yes, Sushant, I think you wanted to come in and you wanted to respond to that. Yes.
Yeah, Aditi, here is the problem. People are entitled to facts, but the Pakistanis have a habit of living in an alternate reality and dealing with alternate facts. And Mr. Haider is doing something similar. You don't have the time to go into details of what happened with Trump and what happened subsequently and what didn't happen. But the Pakistanis have this habit of taking one particular thing, quoting it out of context without any relation to what a particular situation was, and then weaving a quote around a button, which Mr. Mateen is trying to do. Incidentally, let's talk about the UN resolutions. What do the UN resolutions say, Mr. Haider? If I might just ask you a question, what does the UN resolution say, sir?
UN resolution does talk about that the right of plebiscite be given to the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
No, but how will the plebiscite come? अरे बाबा वो तो मुझे भी पता है plebiscite. How will it come?
This will come definitely if India agrees to it. India doesn't allow even United Nations military observer group.
Stage?
We are talking about line of control. We are talking about peace and line of control. And India even doesn't. You are talking to me that we are not looking into the reality. We are looking into the alternate facts.
Resolution?
We are not. But would you kindly respond that why India is not allowing the United Nations military observer group? So I think
have you read the resolution?
Yes.
What does the resolution say? What is the first step which has to be done for the resolution to be implemented? What is the first step that has to be taken?
The first step is once India agrees to the resolution, and currently the action of the 5th August 2019 has to be reversed. And
what
then
is the first step that has to be implemented for the UN?
Resolutions are quite old, but right now, what Pakistan is saying that India should review 5th August 2019 decision. India should review 5th August 2019 decision. India should come on the table And these all things, first step, second step, third step,
Mateen,
whatever steps are there,
No,
these
Okay,
have
Mr.
so
to be
Haider,
Aditya, here
decided
is
at
the
the
problem.
Mr.
negotiation
Haider,
table.
like that.
Mr. Haider,
There
Aditi,
has
Mr.
to be
Haider,
Aditi, you
talk.
have to ask him to keep
These
quiet now.
all
yeah,
modalities,
Mr.
my
Haider,
dear
He is
friends,
not a.
these all
He
modalities
is.
have to be settled down.
Mr.
These are
Haider,
all
I have
modalities have to be discussed at negotiation
agreed,
table.
Mr.
Whenever there have
Haider.
been negotiation.
Mr.
Yes,
Haider, you'll have to stop. You'll have to stop. You'll have to allow
yes.
him a chance to
Yeah,
respond, please.
you can't
Yes,
He was
he can't be
asking
allowed
me
to
questions and I
filibuster
have to
because
respond.
fair
he's
enough.
talking.
I
No,
agree.
no, because I asked
He
you a
should not.
simple question. I asked him a simple question whether he had read the UN resolutions, which clearly he has not. Because if he had read those UN resolutions, which he wants so assiduously, he craves for, he would have realized that the first step that the UN resolutions mandate is that all illegal and all Pakistani forces, illegal or not, Pakistani forces and Pakistani personnel have to vacate the entire territory of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. The Indians will then move in and take control of the entire territory. Now, unfortunately, the Pakistanis have either not read that resolution or read it selectively. The resolution has to follow a certain causality. One thing will lead to another. The first step was not taken by the Pakistanis. They can keep parroting it. It's not going to happen anymore. Number one. Number two, that resolution is a recommendation. It is not a mandatory resolution. Number three, the constitutional reforms which were undertaken in Jammu and Kashmir on August 5 are irreversible. The statehood factor will come back as the government of India has promised that once the situation improves, statehood will be restored. Now, the Pakistanis can keep barking up that tree as long as they can for as much time as they want. If that is their precondition, then it's fine. As far as the ceasefire exists, it exists. When it ends, the firing will start all over again. If that's the way they want to play it, they played it for 70 years, they can carry on playing it for another 70 for all I care.
But fair enough. You want to come in on that, Doctor Mr. Agha, please, because I
No,
felt that you were trying to say
I,
something in between. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
this is what I wanted to point out to Mr. Mateen, that Pakistani army and tribals who enter in and occupy a part of Kashmir had to withdraw and only then
Yes, so
ceasefire.
that
Uh,
aspect of the
that
aspect, that was the first step in
first
the
step, that is the
resolution,
first
and that
step.
since that hasn't been done, therefore that couldn't have been done, Mr. Mateen. But let's not go into history here. Let's talk about the here and now. Here and now, there was a uh, you know, uh, very, after a long sequence of back and forth, there was a very let's bury the past remark by General Bajwa. Pakistan changed its stance. It said, okay, let's stick to the 2002 agreement on ceasefire, and finally it was been implemented. It's been 100 days, and it's been relative calm. But do you believe that Kashmir is an issue? And I'm saying that they saying that because Prime Minister Imran Khan continues to harp on that issue even now. Do you think that Imran Khan's comments could hurt the fragile peace in Indian and Pakistan relations, India and Pakistan relations that have been achieved over the last 100 days?
Yes,
Mr. Mateen?
thank you so much. I think neither Pakistani army chief nor Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan's comments would definitely hurt this or would negatively affect this, which you call a fragile peace, or currently which we say that the peace at the line of control. Pakistani Prime Minister is continuously highlighting the plight of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So he's highlighting that issue, but at the same time,
But sir,
Pakistani
nobody
leadership,
is listening.
listen, Pakistani
But sir,
leadership
nobody
and the
is
military
listening.
leadership,
Every
they are
international
praising this
forum has
ceasefire.
refused
Pakistani
to.
political and military leadership are supporting this peace. They are not speaking against this peace. And earlier, by this worthy analyst, Mr. Shushant, talked about UN resolution that is passed. Now, India, Pakistan has to sit together to decide modalities, how, when, where, these all things. Over last
and
many years,
and
there have been no talks.
which brings me to.
This
India and
is hilarious,
Pakistan
yeah.
has to sit together and
He has
talk
to
about
decide whether he
modalities.
wants the UN
But India is
resolutions or
not
he wants to go
India
into
is
the
not
ceasefire.
ready to talk to Pakistan. Right? India is not
India
ready to
is
talk to
no because
Pakistan.
no because the ambition
Aditi,
that
listen,
India
this is
has.
hilarious.
Yes, please,
Look,
please,
either you
Sushant. Yes.
decide, this is the problem with the Pakistanis. Either they decide they want to go into history, right? They want the UN resolution, or they decide they want to look into the future, or as their army chief said, somewhat disingenuously, that we have to bury the past. They have to decide what they want to bury and whether they want to move ahead or they want to keep raking up those old things of UN resolution. Now, I hope Mr. Mateen goes back home today and reads the UN resolutions before he starts talking about them as he was
I
trying
have
to.
read it already. I have
Every
read
time
the
they are
resolution.
caught, every time they are caught, and they are told about the causality of how the UN resolutions had to be operated, they start hemming and hawing, going from here to there. So let's come down to the brass tacks. If the Pakistanis want to move forward on this peace process, they want this fragile peace process, and you are right, it is fragile because we have crossed this bridge plenty of times in the past where we've had these extended periods of a kind of a peace or semi peace along the line of control, and then hostilities have started all over again. So from 2003 November till about 2011, 10, 11, we had relative peace. From around 2012, the firing started, and by about 14, 15, it had become a regular feature. So for almost now 8 or 9 years, the ceasefire was not existing on the ground, right? So you have to decide whether you want to move forward or you want to go back. And until and unless the Pakistanis decide that, which clearly they haven't, because for Imran Khan, keep raking up the Kashmir issue because he wants to, burnish his political and his Islamist credentials. So as long as that factor operates, I don't see how you are going to be able to move forward.
Okay, fair enough. Point taken. I just want to quickly go to Kamaraga and ask him: does he feel that Imran Khan's Kashmir comments and continued can sabotage the peace, the newfound peace in India-Pakistan relations?
You see, there is a possibility because internal situation in Pakistan is deteriorating very fast, and we
Yeah.
have seen whenever this situation has deteriorated, they move towards Kashmir. They rake up the Kashmir issue. They start firing at the border, and then build up the threat from India to Pakistan. Try to unite people within the country on these lines. So this is not going to happen first time. We have seen a number of times, number of occasions this thing. Now at the moment, the very nationalist forces are rising in Pakistan, especially in Balochistan, then Pashtun Hafiz movement. We have also seen the nationalists talking about different language, and pro-democracy movement is getting stronger day by day. So there is a possibility on such occasion, on such a situation, they normally rake up the Kashmir issue and then,
Right. And
try
there
to
is
disrupt peace.
and there's also the factor of Pakistan. Yes, you rightly pointed out, and Mateen, I will come to you, and I want to ask you about the fact that some analysts believe that the economic stress which Pakistan is facing is actually the reason that it, in the first place, 3 months ago, reached out to India and agreed to seek peace, so to speak. But let's talk about the Afghanistan factor here first, and. Sushant, let me come to you first and ask you what, according to you, the elephant in the room as far as India-Pakistan relations and this newfound peace along the LoC is concerned is really Afghanistan. General Naravane has reiterated that India has no reason to believe that the terror infrastructure along the LoC has been dismantled by Pakistani army. How concerning is that, especially in light of the US withdrawal from Afghanistan?
Well, that remains an abiding concern in India because even in the past, when Afghanistan was controlled by the Pakistani proxies, the Taliban, it had become a training center, a kind of a place where many of the terrorist groups which were operating against India had taken sanctuary, were, their bases were out there. All sorts of things were happening from that side. And then we had not too many, but we had a number of Afghans also coming into Kashmir to fight. Well, they got their butts kicked and they had to leave. But that remains a concern that Afghanistan once again under the Taliban, becomes a kind of a terror central. So that is certainly a very important factor for us. From the Pakistani side, I would imagine the predicament is what Oscar Wilde had said at one point of time, that what is worse than not getting what you want is to get it. So initially they tried to get the Taliban into power way back in 2001 to, in the Bonn process. That didn't work. Then they worked assiduously to get them into power through the terrorism which they unleashed in Afghanistan. Now the Taliban are on the verge of grabbing power, or at least part of the power. So the Pakistanis are now fearing that somewhere along the line there might be a blowback of that inside Pakistan. But I again think that there is an element of disingenuity out there. There would be some people who would be concerned, but these are the very people who were concerned right from day one and who said Pakistan should not interfere in Afghanistan. Not that whatever they say. And unfortunately, our problem is that we tend to take those people in Pakistan or those fringe voices in Pakistan which sound reasonable very seriously. We shouldn't actually. We should take people like Mr. Haider more seriously, because he is saying stuff which is basically what the Pakistani deep state and the Pakistani establishment says. So what he says, I would take a lot more seriously than what some, so-called liberal in Pakistan says, who would be concerned with the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan. I don't think Mr. Mateen would be that concerned. But if he does express some concern...
But Mr. Mateen, can I come to you? Are you concerned about the, Taliban takeover in Afghanistan, at least partly?
I think what this my worthy, yes. I think this is what my worthy analyst, Mr. Sushant, talked about situation in Afghanistan. Just 3 to 4 days back, there was a background briefing at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I would like to very respectfully answer that my thoughts and feelings are not of the deep state in Pakistan. First, I would like to quickly respond to Qamar Agha Sahab. There is no deteriorating situation in Pakistan. Whatever is the political game that is in India, opposition government, same is happening. And other than this, there is no instability in Pakistan. That rest assured.
But the economy, however, is in shambles. Would you
economy, whatever India is facing, economy is a global issue due to COVID pandemic over last 1.5 years. One of the most best economically stable countries are facing that problem. But I do agree, there was this LoC problem that there used to be continuous violation at the line of control. And this has provided relief basically to the people. Now, quickly coming on Afghanistan. So in the background briefing in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Pakistan made it very clear that Pakistan will never support in case Taliban comes and take over Kabul. Pakistan would never support any group. Although the Afghan National Security Advisor's remarks are quite provocative against Pakistan, and Pakistan has communicated to Ashraf Ghani that such elements like NSA of Afghanistan, there won't be any proper understanding, peace talks or anything like that. So why Pakistan is also in Doha, and yesterday there was China, Afghanistan and Pakistan trilateral talks in Islamabad, because China is worried. Afghanistan itself is worried. Mr. Hanif Atmar was virtually participating. Chinese hosted this dialogue. Pakistan was there. Pakistan has extended all possible cooperation to Americans before the withdrawal, during withdrawal, and Pakistan has made it very clear that in case after withdrawal there is any misadventure by Taliban, Pakistan would never support. So this clearly shows Pakistan's neutral policy. And Sushant was very right that in case of any misadventure or civil war that may break out, there would be effects on Pakistan, and Pakistan has every right to take all possible steps to protect itself. And if there is any, God forbid, any instability in Afghanistan, that would not only affect Afghanistan but entire region. So all stakeholders, including Americans, Chinese, Russians, and Iranians and Afghans and Pakistan, why they are meeting in Istanbul, then in Doha, than this virtual meeting, that there has to be peace, and there are terror groups also which are operating in Afghanistan. These terror groups are beyond control of the Afghan government. So
So,
there
so,
is, yes,
so,
there
okay.
is. Let me conclude.
Is there
Let
a,
me. So these, yes, yes,
is
please.
there a fear? Is there a fear within Pakistan of blowback in domestic or within Pakistan of a, I'm not saying of a more powerful Taliban, because that fear definitely is there in India. Because if there is that blowback, and please, Mr. Kamaraga, I'd like to come to you on that. We there. I've been speaking to a lot of analysts, and many of them say that that there is definitely going to be an impact, because where is the terror spillover going to go? It's going to be directed towards India. And please, what's your perspective on that?
You see, one thing is there. Pakistan wants Taliban to take over Afghanistan, especially the Kabul. They don't like a democratically elected government, because this government works in the interest of national interest of Afghanistan. They prefer Taliban, which is their proxy. They're funded and trained by Pakistan. Besides that, the Taliban headquarters is also based in Quetta and other places. So they move from there. They have been receiving total support, even in negotiation and military or otherwise. Also, so the Pakistan wants, instability. Pakistan doesn't want a very stable Afghanistan. The reason is, stable Afghanistan is not in the interest of Pakistan. Pakistan have been working tirelessly for long, last 30 or 40 years, to ensure that Afghanistan remains stable. That's why, they've created Taliban. First, they supported Mujahideen, then they brought Taliban. And within the Taliban, they have not, it's not a monolithic group. They've created number of groups
Very
within.
respectfully, Mr. Kamaraga, the Mujahideen were also the creation of American CIA.
Pakistan was there, and
Support.
Americans have supported that. At that time, you had a very good ties with America. You were opposing the Russian intervention, and support was coming from America as well. Afghanistan is a very strategically located country. Pakistan has an interest. Pakistan's policy of strategic depth is applies there. Pakistan. Secondly, Afghanistan has a lot of natural resources worth about $3 trillion. So Pakistan has an eye on that. Pakistan wants these warlords, because these Taliban's are behaving like a war, exactly like the warlords in Africa. Similar fashion, they are also behaving, controlling different territories. They've already started selling these resources to Pakistani business men at a very cheap rate. So this is the main crux is, the Pakistan want to have in stable Afghanistan. Number two,
And
have an eye on these resources. Third, they have the Americans also sick and tired of this war. They are withdrawing. Virtually, they are handing over Afghanistan to Pakistan. By
but
sudden
but
withdrawal.
that means
That is
instability in
another.
the region. But that means
One second.
instability in the region and in India.
But
Therefore,
one second. I just want to add one thing.
sure.
If Taliban, gains power or dislodge this government, then there'll be a major problem for Pakistan, because for two reasons. One is the Afghan army will will fight till the last battle, because they are nationalists, and they have the support of the local people in that country, and they will not only fight with these Talibans, but they will also enter into Pakistan and create problem for them, because they know that who is behind Taliban. They know from where they are getting support. So this is going to be a long drawn battle. It will not help Pakistan. I think peace and stability is in the long interest will be helpful for both India and Pakistan. And Pakistan has to understand that India has a big support in Afghanistan. We have, and the Pakistan policy is to ensure that India no longer plays any role in Afghanistan and wants to total domination. That is not possible. So there'll be a
Okay.
major problem.
This is an issue that probably we're not going to. It is a concerning issue, and especially I just want to take your opinion, Sushant. If you can just tell us how concerning is the how clear and present is the danger of terror movements and terrorist infiltrations across the LoC, with regard to the, on one hand, after the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan, because Taliban is going to become a resurgent force there. It's already becoming one.
Look, the importance of the Taliban taking over in the context of terrorism inside India, especially in Jammu and Kashmir, I think we need to look at it from a slightly different lens. Why Afghanistan becomes important is because it gives a degree of plausible deniability to the Pakistanis, that they can shift all these camps and all these people, these despicables, into that area and say that, look, we have nothing to do with it. But please remember, Aditi, of people who will infiltrate into India from those Afghan terror camps, if Afghanistan becomes a terror central once again, like it was in the 1990s, are not going to dig a tunnel or come through the sea or fly over Pakistan. They will be facilitated, they will be escorted, they will be pushed in by the Pakistanis into India. It will not happen without the complicity and the connivance of the Pakistanis.
Obviously.
So
Yeah.
our problem will, whether the Taliban take over or they don't take over, our basic problem, the principal problem we will continue to face is Pakistan. So that isn't going to change regardless of what happens in Afghanistan. The other thing I want to say, where one place where I disagree with Mr. Aga is, I'm not very sure Mr. Aga's perspective on Taliban takeover having serious consequences for Pakistan. I think his perspective is coming from the typical, what do you call, the rational kind of a way of looking at how this thing is likely to unfold. But I think this Pakistani standpoint of rationality is very different from the way, or at least the Pakistani establishment's standpoint of rationality is very different from the way we perceive it. Now, whatever cock and bull briefing was given to by the Pakistani Foreign Office or by the ISI or whoever else, they want people to believe that Pakistan is seriously concerned about a Taliban takeover, which is very rich. Considering that for the last 20 years, the Pakistanis have supported, sponsored, given sanctuary to the Taliban. Today, suddenly, they have orchestrated the Taliban movement. They have directed it. Their ex-servicemen have participated in some of the operations of the Taliban. Their links with the Haqqani network are very well known. They have embedded the Haqqani network in the Taliban.
And very quickly, sorry for interruption, Haqqani network had the blessing from the White House as well.
Keep quiet, yaar. The Taliban have been living in Pakistan. And for the Pakistanis to suddenly say that if the Taliban take over, having supported them for 20 years, they are very concerned, I think that is basically eyewash for the rest of the world. The Pakistanis will be very happy to have the Taliban, at least the Pakistani establishment, will be very happy to have the Taliban in power because they think they will be able to control it. Whether they will or they will not is another matter.
That is the issue. Exactly. And how bad, they might think that they will be able to control that, but they were not able to control it even the last
because
time
in
around.
the end, you can only rent an Afghan, you can't own him.
Okay, Mr. Mateen, you wanted to come in quickly, so because we are
yes, very quickly, I would yes. just very quickly like to respond to what Mr. Sushant said. One, if Pakistan is friendly with the Taliban, this means that Talibans have never been an enemy of Pakistan. Why should Pakistan be opposing Taliban then? And very quickly in 2020, just not 40 years back, Pakistan hosted Abdullah in Islamabad. Pakistan hosted Mr. Ashraf Ghani in Islamabad. Pakistan hosted Afghan Taliban dialogue in Islamabad. Pakistan hosted Gulbuddin Hikmat Yar in Islamabad. There have been people from across section of Afghan society that Pakistan hosted in Islamabad. If they are now coming to Haqqani network has never been an enemy of Pakistan. And go back to the files of 1983 and 1984. Big Haqqani Jalaluddin Haqqani was spotted in the White House Oval Office. sitting with the then US president. Time change, Mr. Shushan, time change. That time was different. Haqqanis were supported by the White House, by Pentagon, by Central Intelligence Agency. Now the time change. Game is different. At that time, game was different. The game
So,
was to
what
fight
is the
Russians. Now the game
In
is
fact,
Mr.
different.
Mateen?
Aditya,
Mr.
Right
Mateen,
now,
what is the game
last
now,
thing,
Mr.
the
Mateen?
effort is to establish peace in Afghanistan. Pakistan want peace and
Do
stability,
you
not
do
war.
you believe that is possible, sir?
That is
Aditi,
peace.
Honest,
Mr.
sir.
Haider has only
Honest.
proved my point. Mr. Haider has just proved my point where I said they don't care if the Taliban come into power. They have worked to getting the Taliban into power. So all this, this story which they are spreading to the rest of the world that no, we are not wanting the Taliban into power is basically to tell the world to stop the hostility of the world towards them, number one. Number two, not get any blame thrown on their side that you have orchestrated this, because the Taliban will do what the Taliban have always done. They are despicable people. They are brutes. They are medieval monsters, yeah, for God's sake. They will do to the women, they will do to the opposition, they will do to everybody what they did in the 1990s. So let's be under no illusion about what they are going to do, right? The Pakistanis want that. And there I agree with Mr. Agha that they want those kind of people in Afghanistan. They want to control Afghanistan through them. Whether they will or will not be able to do it is another matter altogether.
will not be able.
Mr.
I don't think
Towards it.
I don't think they'll be able to control Afghanistan because large majority of Afghan people are opposed to Taliban, number one. Then the regional countries, they also perceive threat coming from Taliban, which are backed by Pakistan. So immediately they are already in talks with each other, that about the stability of Afghanistan, whether it
So
is
as
Iran, whether it is Central Asian republics or other countries, they don't want Taliban to come back, And the second thing, they want continuation of the same elected government in Afghanistan. Besides that, Afghan forces will fight till the end. They're not going to surrender. What they need better equipment, they need more support, they need some training, and I hope these countries will provide them once American withdraw from Afghanistan. It
and
should not
as
it
America
won't be
prepares to withdraw from that region, yes, a lot of challenges are ahead, and
not
it is going to be a very challenging time for the entire region, so to speak, especially given the fact that we are all undergoing, or we are all under, we've been, our energies are spent as far as battling this pandemic is concerned, and we anyway have a lot of problems to resolve. This will be just another challenge which is staring at us in the face, but I only have time for this much today. This discussion of course could have continued for much longer, but thank you for joining us. Mr. Matun, you were saying something? No, all right. Thank you so much for joining us for this broadcast. We'll keep coming back to you with more. Stay tuned to Hindustan Times.